Hello everyone, hope you're well. It's the school holidays, so because there's nothing kind of dramatic going on or any kind of stories that have happened throughout each day, I thought, you know what, I'll go back to the routine of telling the random stories from my past and the shenanigans we got up to. I did a video the other week, which I'll put up here, wherever it goes, about when I met Mrs. Sheepdog, my wife Claire, and up to the point where basically we'd started going out. I'd, started my life with her in it. And I thought, you know what? It'd be good to carry on that story. It's our 10-year wedding anniversary on the 2nd of May, and I thought I could probably fit in some highlights up to that point, and then I think at our anniversary I'll do like the past 10 years kind of summary of where we were at each point. I think that'd be quite a nice, in my head it makes quite a nice story of just things that, being married to me has been like, what being married to her has been like, and so forth. So the bit I wanted to cover today was the bit between meeting her and starting a relationship and the bit where I proposed and asked her to marry me, because I thought there's quite a lot that went on there, and hopefully it'll be an interesting story for you all. So I think where I left off before, it's 2005. I'd just started university. Literally someone had asked me whether she was my girlfriend after the meeting her and her coming to visit me, and I'd said yes, and then she'd had some doubts and wasn't really sure, and I'd convinced her that we'd make it work, and I basically spent every penny I had visiting her all the time. Whenever there wasn't lessons on, I visited her. We got to the point where I think it was probably, so we met in September, and by January, February, March time, I had to start making plans for year 2 of university. I remember being really awkward because there was doing a nursing degree, well, it wasn't even a degree, it was a diploma. Doing a nursing diploma, there was literally 4 blokes on the course with me. Obviously, none of the girls would want to live with a random guy on their course. So the situation was I needed to find someone who'd be willing to live with me for the remainder of the course. I spoke to this Irish fella who was doing the course, and we sort of discussed the idea of living together. He had some mates who were doing another course, and the idea kind of mortified me, if I'm honest. I didn't like the idea of living with 4 random blokes who I'd never really knew, didn't get on with particularly or anything like that. Just happened to be that they needed another man. And I think, oddly, I happened to visit Claire whilst this was going on. And I kept thinking to myself, ask her to move in with you. It's a bit mad, it's a bit quick, but see if she'd be up for living together. Like every step, I mentioned before that I wanted to tell her I loved her, and I massively made a big deal about not wanting to do it too soon. I think I mentioned this, and I finally one night pulled her aside and said, look, I love you. And when I got home, she'd already sent me a message telling me she loved me before I'd even left to visit her, that I just hadn't seen because I'd left. So she's always been on the kind of the same wavelength as me. So I went to visit her, and I wanted to bring it up, and I wanted to suggest that perhaps we should live together. Before I even got to where I'd thought I might bring it up, just before I leave, and if it causes World War III, I could just go, oh, well, we'll chat about it later, see you later, bye, so no pressure. But literally I got there, and she was like, my rent's up at the end of June. I think it was June. I don't really have any reason to live in Coventry anymore. Do you fancy getting a place together near your uni? And I was just like, yeah, like, okay, you've solved everything. Plan was she'd get a job, I'd go to uni, we'd get a place to rent, like a 1-bed flat, and it'd be great, and we'd just live like kings because we'd have enough money to pay the bills, and we'd all be happy, and we'd save on the whole travelling around, and it'd all be great. The big plan was to live in Hatfield next to the uni. I went to University of Hertfordshire, but we wandered around, we looked at a few houses here and there, and found that uni towns are well expensive. They get ripped off. So we decided, in our infinite wisdom, to go and move to Nebworth. We found a masonette, a little house. It had 2 floors, but it's like you had to go upstairs to get to the bottom floor, and then up more stairs to get to the 2nd floor. We lived there maybe 3 weeks, and then decided to get Molly, who's running around sniffing in the corner, which is really funny, just thinking this is so far back, but Molly was there, our first child. I remember it was my sister's birthday, August 18th, and we'd had Molly like a day. We went down to Essex to visit my family, and we passed a pet shop, and we were like, we wanted to get a dog. We've been talking about getting a dog once we'd lived together and we were settled in, and we were like, let's go in and have a look at what they've got. And they handed us both a dog, and we were both like, oh, this is so cute, and falling in love with the one we had. And then Claire was saying, this one's the one I want, and I was like, no, this one's the one we want. And I was, she's licking me and all this, and I was like, no, I want this dog. And we agreed to sort of step back a minute, have a chat, and then we went with my dog. We got Molly, brought her home, and I remember she, bless her, was all sort of sad and in a little sort of hut that she slept in, and my sister came up to help us bed her in. I think she needed to stay the night or whatever, and yeah, it was really cute. We lived with her for, I think we lived in that house for 6 or 7 months, and then we realised, basically it got to our second year of uni, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before on the vlog, but I got into uni one day. I'd spent my last 10 quid on a train fare into Hatfield, and the lecture was cancelled, and I was so annoyed that I'd spent the last tenner I had on nothing that I went back home on my return ticket. I rang the uni, I just said, look, I quit, I can't afford to do this anymore. You don't pay your nurses enough. It's a joke, I don't want to do it, I'm out, I'm going to get a job. So we then bumbled about a bit. We were pretty much living off of Claire's income anyway. I basically planned to get a job, and I think what essentially happened was we agreed with the landlord to let us out of that rent really quickly. He charged us through the nose for it, and we moved in with Claire's parents for a couple of months, which, looking back, I'd known Claire maybe a year at this point, a year and a half, and her parents were amazing. They let us move in with them. It was ridiculous. I look back at that now and think that if Emily came to us and said, I've known this guy for X amount of time, you know, can we live with you? Can we, you know, whatever, we need to get ourselves together. I'm sure we'd say yes, but looking back, I was mortified. I felt terrible that Claire's poor parents had basically agreed to let me live with them for that amount of time, just because we were trying to figure something out. So I went and got a job in insurance. I worked for a company that does the compare the market, all of those brands that they sell. So I just answer phones and talk through and all this, that and the other. Once I'd been there a couple of months and Claire had got a job, I can't remember what she was doing and whether she's working for a charity or whether she's working in a school. But we both had jobs, we were both paying our rent, and we basically had our own house. It was lovely, it was beautiful. We thought this house was perfect. We had a 3-bed house. We had our room, we had a room that would have been our eventual child's room that even had like Winnie the Pooh borders around it, and it was all set out ready for a child. We hadn't ever had the conversation about it, but we both, I think, deep down knew that if we were going to have a kid, that was where they were going to stay and that was going to be their room. So we did that. We were in that house. I had my own room for football managering in and watching telly and stuff like that. Claire usually sat in the living room downstairs. And life was pretty sweet. We basically had probably 9 months of just living in this house. I'd be answering phones at this company. I went up, you know, become like their 3rd best salesman. Well, it's weird, I play myself down. I was their 3rd best salesman, but I was their only full-time salesman that was hitting the numbers I was hitting. The people above me were part-time, and this guy that I found out was massively cheating the system. So I never got the accolade of being the best salesman, but I had this woman who was only in 8 hours a week and just only took good calls. And this bloke who learned that if somebody rang up and said, I want to drive a 4-litre turbo and I'm 17, he just wouldn't do the quote. Whereas I was just playing the system exactly how they taught me to, and I was smashing the numbers. So everything was perfect. It was all lined up. I was living with the love of my life. I had a job I was successful at, and everything was just good. It was nice. I was very happy. So I remember going swimming, of all things, with Claire, and we're swimming up and down talking about what we'd call our firstborn kid and what we'd do to get married. And I was saying, well, obviously, if we ever got married, we'd get married down south because all my family lived there, and your family is quite small. They can travel down, we can put them up, but putting up my family up here would be an impossible task. It wouldn't work. And I remember us having these conversations and thinking, okay, so she's not kind of going, oh, bloody hell, slow down. And then I remember her mum joking to me saying one day, when are you going to propose? And I was just like, ha, 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 ha. And on the way home, I basically said to Claire, I don't really want to get married. I mean, it's not really something I want to do. And I'm a bit stupid. I don't know why I said this, but I basically wanted to throw her off the scent. I do know why I said it. But I mentioned before, when she did her pregnancy test with Emily, it said negative and we threw it in the bin. And I remember thinking, in Friends, they found Rachel's pregnancy test in the bin and it had turned positive, and that's how she found out she was pregnant. So I checked the bin and Emily's, the pregnancy test had turned positive, and I rang Claire and told her she was pregnant. So Friends has had an influence on my mindset with these things. So I thought, I'll tell her I don't want to get married, it'll be fine. And then remembered what had happened in Friends when they did that and regretted it massively. And since I've spoken to Claire about it, and she was like, yeah, I wonder what the hell you were doing. Why the hell you'd come out with that? I thought we were heading towards that, and then out of the blue you said you didn't want to get married, and I was suddenly like, what the hell? So anyway, I decided I definitely wanted to propose, but I didn't know how to do it or when to do it and all this, that and the other. I knew that Claire wasn't the sort of person who'd want me to ask permission, so I didn't ask permission, which is interesting because a lot of people insist on that being the way. I thought I was going to be the sort of person who would choose a ring in advance, and I went into town and I remember talking to a lady and saying I'd like to buy a wedding ring, an engagement ring, and she basically said to me, okay, what's your monthly income? Okay, we'll start at these rings. They start at like, I can't remember what my income was, but let's say she said, oh, these start at 6 grand, 7 grand, whatever. And I was just like, okay, yeah. And looking at these rings thinking, I didn't think this through. So I let her show me a ridiculous amount of rings that I wasn't going to buy in a million years because I just didn't have that kind of money. I then went to another place, they did the same thing, and after standing in 2 jewellery shops, just letting them show me rings that I couldn't have afforded if I'd sold my kidney, I thought, you know what, it's not the ideal situation, but I'm going to just basically not use a ring. I'm going to ask her, and then I'm going to make that part and parcel of the excitement. So it was her birthday coming up, and I thought, right, we'll go down to London. I paid for this kind of packagey type thing where we went for a nice meal in, I think it was Frankie Dettori, the horse racers restaurant. We went to a comedy night. We had a really, we went and saw a show. I think it might have been Wicked or something like that. I think we saw a show. I might be wrong. I'm sure it was a show. We basically went out for the night. You know, so we went for the meal. I thought I won't propose at the meal because I know she would not want me proposing in front of all these people. But I was nervous and thinking maybe I should. We saw the show. We went for the comedy show. I'm sat through the comedy show thinking, oh my God, I'm laughing, but I felt really hollow because I just wanted to get this done to find out. Because I was thinking, what if she said, the doubts were starting to creep in. What if she says no? What if she just kind of is shocked? What if she's changed her mind or she's not ready or whatever? Part of me was like, she'll say, yes, she's been living with you for long enough. It'll all be fine. And then we started our journey back and I'm thinking, I've got to do it at some point. I can't just like not do it. At the time I had no plan, but there was no scenario where it seemed feasible. It just didn't seem like it was going to happen. And we got back to our hotel, and I remember we had to go up this winding, like, short staircase thing, up all these stairs. We stayed in this hotel where on the way in, it's weird how this wouldn't have the same effect now, but on the way in, the bloke was telling us that Michael Jackson had stayed there and things like that, and we were like, oh, all right, cool. And I don't think he ever had, but now we're kind of like, you wouldn't be bragging about that if he did. But we went in anyway, and Claire said something like, God, I'm really cold. And I said something like, I'm really nervous. And she went, what? Why? And then I just like fell onto a knee and was like, because I want to ask you to marry me. And then went on my other knee because I'd fell in a really awkward position. And I remember her going really pink and being like, and saying yes straight away, which I knew she would really deep down. So then we hugged and kissed and we were really delighted. And then she was texting her mum and dad. Actually, I can't remember. I don't think she did tell her mum and dad. I think I texted my dad to say, she said yes. I was like texting 20 different people who knew because I couldn't keep it in. I'd been telling my mates. I'd been telling like my dad. I don't know. I think I told my dad and then I told maybe one mate, but then I was telling everybody else that I'd asked her. We were all excited. And then I said to her, I'm really sorry I didn't get a ring. I thought it might be exciting if we went and bought one. I've got the money here. We'll go and we'll look at that. She was well excited. We spent like some of her birthday the next day walking around Oxford Street trying to find a ring. I'm wondering if I've said before, actually, she shocked me because she thinks things through quite nicely because she knew we had a wedding to save for and other things to worry about. She went into a place, found the ring she liked. I couldn't believe how inexpensive it was. I was just like, are you sure? and it still gets me a little bit thinking that she's got an engagement ring that she spent so little on, but obviously means enough to her that she's happy. I always feel like if I was ever to strike it rich in writing books or whatever, I'd want to buy her a nice fancy one or whatever, but she's always like, no, I like the one I've got. It's my ring. I remember us going into a shop and buying it and then coming out and she didn't put it on and we got back in the car for her to drive us back and she went, well, you need to propose again with a ring. And so I got the ring out and I was like, Claire, will you marry me? And she was like, yes. And then I went to put it on her finger and we dropped it and it fell between the clutch of her car and the chair and we were trying to get the clutch bit up and it was just pinned in place. And I was trying to get my hands under it and trying to pull it and it weren't working. And in the end, she just hulked and she ripped it up, grabbed the ring out, just stuck it on her finger, and was like, "There, we're done." And she was like, "It's on." And yeah, I was a little bit embarrassed. So then we drove back that night, went to her mum and dad's and told them the news. Her dad was a little bit like, didn't ask my permission. And Claire was like, I didn't want to ask your permission. So that was awesome. We were very excited. Everyone was happy. It was all lovely. I like those moments of going around their house to tell them stuff. We had that obviously with the kids since. But interestingly from there, we basically started saving for the wedding, and we were like, right, let's get the money together. We worked out if we saved, I don't know, 500 quid a month, whatever it was, by X point we could afford the wedding. So we set the date and we set where we were getting married. I wanted to get married in the same place my parents got married, just because of sentimentality. It's a church and I'm not religious, so it's a bit of an odd decision, but we went with it. A decision that people won't let me live down whenever I say something about how I don't really like religion. They're like, you got married in a church. But we arranged it all and it was all set out and we knew what we were going to do and we had it all planned. And then we said to each other, it'd be nice to start to have kids really early on in marriage. So that by the time, our plan was, by the time I'm like in my mid-40s, I'd like my children to be relatively, old enough to go to university or whatever. And we were like, so we want to kind of get this sorted. I was 22 at the time. We were like, so we want to have a kid maybe in the first year or two of being married, and then next one as soon as possible, the next one. We started trying, thinking that it might take a little while, and we're so like, we plan everything, so we were like, if it takes a year and we've not done it, like we've not succeeded, then we'll get help from a doctor, but we need to have that year in advance first. They won't let us just jump in and start getting help. So we started trying, and then Claire got pregnant with Emily like that. It was that whole thing. We were at this lovely house, and I remember we did the pregnancy test and it said negative, and we were like, oh. And then she went to work, and then I checked the bins, and I rang her and was like, Claire, I think you're pregnant. And she was like, what? No. So we did another one the next day, and it was like, ah. So we had to go tell her parents again, another great good news moment, and they were all like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. Then we realised, we looked at everything and we thought, we can't afford a kid and a wedding at the same time the way we are at the moment. We were like, we could scale the wedding back, or we could scale this back, or we got rid of the honeymoon like that, because obviously that wasn't really necessary. We didn't have a honeymoon. But we went to Centre Parks for like 4 days, but we didn't have a proper honeymoon. So what we did, I worked out that the exact amount of money we needed to save, it required me to have the same job but no rent, and that would cover everything. So what we did was we moved to my mum and dad's. We lived there for like 9 months. Basically, we moved down there September time. Emily was born in December. We moved back up to Lincolnshire for September when I started uni. But in that in-between gap, we had a baby. We lived in my mum and dad's spare room and kitchen. We turned their kitchen into a living room. I used to have Emily sleeping in a basket next to me while I'd play online computer games overnight, just to stay up with her. So if she woke up, Claire could sleep, I could give her a bottle. I worked for another insurance company down in Romford. It was really bizarre. It was like we saved enough money, we had help from family and everything. We had a really nice wedding down in Essex. That was brilliant. I mean, I can do that in another video nearer the time, but nearer the anniversary, I mean. But it's just really weird thinking about that whole kind of period. That was 2008. So between 2005 and 2008, 3 years. 2009, the 1st of January 2009, Emily was born. We got married the 2nd of May 2009. So that was like 3.5 years. We basically moved in together, got married and had a kid. And then I decided that I was fed up working in insurance and wanted to get a degree. So Claire said to me the only way we could do it is if we lived near family. So I looked at the University of Essex and the University of Peterborough. Peterborough accepted me, so here we are. And everything else from that moment onwards is everything that you've ever seen online with any podcast or anything like that. And I'll go through that in another video, because I know someone asked about meeting Kev and all that kind of stuff, and that is all tied into it. But that is me from the moment I met Claire right up to the moment I met Kev, in a nutshell, basically. I'm going to round it off because I can hear them going wild upstairs, and we're at 13 minutes for this part, so I don't know if you add all the bits together, it must be nearly 20 minutes, but it's mad thinking all of this stuff was 10 plus years ago. It feels like it's gone like that. I feel like I'm still that person, and none of this stuff's happened yet. It's so weird being in this position, but I love how much we've fit into essentially 13.5 years of knowing each other. I'm really pleased with myself that I've got such a beautiful, brilliant wife, and she's given me 3 amazing kids and a fantastic dog. I can see you there. And yeah, it's all good. I feel lucky. I feel like I did everything quite early because, as I mentioned, I was 21, 22. I must have been 20 when I met Claire, so I was 23 and a half by the time Emily was born. I'm exactly 23 years older than her, I think that works out as. Which is mad. I've done so much, and I'm only 33. With all that, I need to. If my career can be as successful as that in the space of 10 years, then things will be good in 10 years' time. But I feel like it's been a rush. I'm happy anyway. It's been brilliant, and I hope you've enjoyed the story. I hope some of that wasn't too much I'm sure I've covered little bits of this in other videos, but I just thought it'd be fun to do them chronologically. Get to the meeting Kev, university, all that other stuff in the next video, plus the 10 years of being married to Claire video. I think that is a nice little connection series of just my life story, which is a little bit egomaniac style stuff, but I don't know, hopefully you'll find it interesting. I'm going to wrap it up because I'm waffling, but thanks very much for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, and I'll see you at the end of the week. Cheers.